Greetings and welcome to our daily Devo for Thursday, October the 19th today. And our devotion this morning is entitled, Jesus Announces His Impending Death in Jerusalem. And just a reminder, this is the book we're using for our devotions, a walking tour of the Gospels, experience the life and lessons of Jesus. And he always ties in the importance of the place, which I think oftentimes we might overlook. But it has been very, very informative and very eye-opening, especially yesterday's. John A. Beck is the author. He has a website too. If you want to go to that, just look him up online. Today's Jesus Announces His Impending Death in Jerusalem. Has Matthew 16 and Mark 8 and Luke 9. He was very upfront about it and didn't pull any punches. That's one of the things I love about Jesus. Never asks us to do anything he didn't do himself, and won't send us any place he hasn't been himself. We're moving on through here, and our author starts this off by saying big changes were in the works. It's kind of an understatement, isn't it? Big changes were in the works. Jesus was about to trade his ministry in the north, which was going gangbusters. He was about to trade it in for mistreatment in Jerusalem. As they began the trip south, Jesus explained more fully what this meant for him and for his disciples. For Jesus, the trip south signaled an increase in tensions with the Jewish leadership of Jerusalem that would culminate in his arrest, trials, abuse, and execution. He would rise from the dead, but that detail seems to have gotten lost amid the horror of all the others he was sharing. For both Jesus and the disciples, this meant an increase in Satan's activity as he sought to upend this rescue plan. He was desperate to stop it because this trip to Jerusalem spelled final defeat for this fallen angel. At the start of Jesus' public ministry, the devil had used the flanks of Mount Hermon to offer Jesus a path to the kingdoms of the world without the cross, Matthew 4, 8 through 11. Now in this same region, using the voice of Jesus' trusted follower, Peter, this maniacal spirit sought to interfere with Jesus' trip south. The voice was Peter's, but Jesus quickly identified the one behind it. Get behind me, Satan. Ouch. Ouch. He turns and says that to Peter, but beyond Peter, to that who was influencing Peter's thoughts and words. Get behind me, Satan. Remember, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with spiritual forces. That happens in Matthew 16:23. One thing was now certain. Satan's efforts to prevent the trip to Jerusalem had begun. They had begun. For the disciples and other followers of Jesus, this meant reframing their view of what it meant to be a believer. We have to go through that at times. They also would bear the cross. The Romans often had the criminals and slaves facing execution carry part of the cross to the execution site. Here, Jesus is using that image as a metaphor. He's not talking about the hardships and difficulties that are generally part of the human experience. He is speaking of the consequences, particularly about being a follower of Jesus. Not all believers face the same kind or degree of challenge, but all believers of Jesus are challenged to demonstrate self-denial, putting the Lord and his church ahead of their own interests, even if that means surrendering life itself. Quoting Jesus' words in Matthew 16:25, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. Hard words, and I'm sure not easily understood in Jesus' day. Again, they had expectations. Jesus wasn't fitting into those expectations, which means for them it was hard to understand some of the things he was saying. One time, the things he was saying were so difficult, a lot of people turned their back on him, walked away. These are all things that still happen. There's nothing new under the sun. So often, I appreciate how we worded this toward the bottom of the first page. Not all believers face the same kind of degree or challenge. But he's talking here about what we face as a follower of Jesus, not the general hardships and difficulties that everybody has in life. Everybody, even the most wealthiest people, have difficulties. Maybe it's personal relationships, because being that wealthy can make you hard to get along with. Or on the other hand, you don't know if those people want to be your friends because they like you or they like your money. All of life, I don't care at what level you live at, is going to have its varying degrees of difficulties and heartbreak. But some are going to have more than others. But that's regular life. That's regular life. Jesus is particularly talking about suffering for his sake. The difficulties in life that come because you are his. You are a follower of his. And if you're going to want to keep yourself away from those kinds of things, you're going to lose your life. Not your literal physical life per se, but that eternal life. You can't live to protect yourself and still be able to follow Jesus in the way he calls us to follow him. It's all or nothing with him. He must come first. His kingdom must come first. Seek first. Matthew 6:33. I've always appreciated that my parents wrote that verse in the first Bible they gave to me. I still have it. I don't use it, but I still have it for that memory of putting Matthew 6:33 as the verse they wanted me to see and know, and I assume live by as well. And it has been a verse that's been so very, very important to me over my life. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. The rest of the stuff, it comes at the end of that passage in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus, likens the birds of the air and the flowers of the field and how they don't do anything for themselves, and yet God takes care of them. And that's what he does for us too. As we seek him first, as we're willing to lay things down, make sacrifices, give up things that are in the way of our following him, he takes care of the rest. And that's the goal here as he's heading to Jerusalem. He is going to teach his disciples a different way to look at being a follower of his. They were seeing the demons cast out and the dead people raised. They were seeing the sick healed, even long distance. Even long distance. Jesus didn't even have to go there in person and people could be healed. That's exciting stuff. But there's more. There's more to the rest of the story. For Jesus and for us as we follow him. It is a difficult decision. They are difficult decisions that we often have to make, but they've got to be made if we're going to be completely committed to Christ and his kingdom. Blessings to you today. Be committed to Jesus in this day.